Season 2, Episode 3, Rise of Apocalypse, Part 1. We see En Sabah Nur and Magneto talking about being the first of his kind. And clearly, Magneto has told En Sabah Nur, who is actually Apocalypse later on, that he is also a mutant. And they have conversations about being mutants in a time where there aren't actual mutants. If you don't know, En Sabah Nur is one of the first mutants to technically be born. I know there's some retconning going on, and like, yeah, I don't want to get into it because Apocalypse is already complicated, and this is incredibly complicated because we also deal with Ramatut. Ramatut is Nathaniel Richards, who is also Kang. So it's just so much. And if you remember, when Bishop gets stuck in the axis of time in season 4, I think, of the original animated series, we see Bender, who is also a variation of Kang. So anytime you're dealing with time and it's apocalypse, it's gonna be Kang. En Sabah Nur and Magneto actually have a conversation about being born a slave and becoming a leader, and they the conversation that they actually have, it shows that Apocalypse understands that he it took a lot for him to rise to the occasion of becoming En Sabah Nur and leading these people, leading the Sandstormers to, you know, Fort Ramatut. He understands that portion of it, but he doesn't understand the fact that he shouldn't enslave people right behind him. Like, it's almost insane. But anyway, they have that conversation. Chandra, Chandra tells the Pharaoh, which is Ramatut, that En Sabah Nur is coming. And the Pharaoh tells General Lagos to redirect his forces to the front, because basically to the front line, because En Sabah Nur is coming. Which I feel like if he wasn't scared, he wouldn't change any forces. But he sends his forces to the front line, and we find out that the forces that he is actually talking about are the robots, which I feel like is so fucking backwards. So we got robot slave overseers whipping actual people slaves that are supposedly building the pyramids, which I love X-Men because they always tend to ingrain history with X-Men shit. And like, you know how people say that the pyramids had to be built by aliens because of the structural, like, building of it and how it was structurally built and the technology that was needed in order to build the pyramids. We see robots building the pyramids here. Well, we see robots instructing humans to build the pyramids, and the robots are actually beating the humans, which I feel like they probably could have got everything that they needed done quicker if they just put the robots to work, because they don't need food, they don't need shelter, they don't get tired, none of that shit. So it was just stupid. General Lagos tells the slaves to fight on Ramatut's side, which I feel like is interesting because it's a known thing that slave masters do. Like, if you fight for us, we'll let you free. Like Civil War. In the Civil War, a lot of the black slaves who fought in the Civil War for Confederate side were promised freedom. A lot of them were promised freedom. And a lot of times that's how you get black people to join the military. Like, even with World War II, like, a lot of them were promised like GI Bill benefits and things like that, and they did not receive those things. That has always been a thing for slave owners or the government or people to tell black people or slaves that if they fight on the side of the oppressors, that they'll some kind of way win their freedom. But if your oppressors are oppressing you already, how can they, well, why would they give you give you your freedom if they benefit from oppression? Magneto and Charles talk, and Charles yells at Magneto, which I feel like Magneto telling Charles to shut up in season 1 needs to happen again in season 2, because I'm tired. Charles is just, it's so long, so much monologuing, and it's just like, shut up and do something. Shut up and do something. Okay, anyway, Charles fusses at Magneto about Apocalypse and who Apocalypse is and what they know Apocalypse will do. And it's so weird because we see Apocalypse's eyes, and it's almost like he's told something or he hears something, or we also see the evil in his eyes, because like I can't tell if he actually heard them, like how Nathan heard Jean and Scott, or if it's just them showing him becoming Apocalypse and making the jump from En Sabah Nur. Magneto asked Charles to trust him, which I feel like that's the least he's deserved after everything that he went through last season. But Magneto basically tells Charles to trust him. En Sabah Nur gives an impassioned speech about being born a slave and becoming more than a slave, but he also ends this speech with the survival of the fittest, which is that is one of his mottos as Apocalypse. That like the idea isn't that mutants just take over, it's that they win out because they are the fittest to inherit the earth. Let's talk about Nathaniel Richards. He is a brilliant scientist from a utopian future, utopian meaning it was perfect, and he becomes bored and decides to use time travel capabilities to conquer ancient Egypt as Ramatut. And honestly, it is the most colonizer shit I've ever fucking heard. You come from a time where things are perfect, where everyone is happy, everyone has enough food, children live to be however old they live, and you're bored of that. And because you're bored of that shit, you decide to go back to ancient Egypt and enslave people. That's who Nathaniel Richards is. Kang. Anyway, his so En Sabah Nur's idea of the survival of the fittest thing is already cemented in his head. That is who he is already. So Apocalypse leads the Sandstormers into battle when the robots actually attack back. And Logo says En Sabah Nur is able to defeat the robots easily, and he gets to Logos. Logos says perseverance is a virtue of slaves. And it's so condescending. En Sabah Nur takes out all of the robots basically by himself. A lot of the Sandstormers die. And he's able to toss the elephant that Logos is on, which I felt like was kind of epic. Logos falls. And when Logos falls, we see En Sabah Nur walking up to Logos. And it's one of those situations where you see the outline of Apocalypse, but it's actually En Sabah Nur. So when the dust clears, you see En Sabah Nur, but it looks like Apocalypse, right? And it reminded me of Ahsoka when Vader is talking to Ahsoka in like the world between worlds. You see Anakin and you hear Anakin, but you see Vader's outline, and it's just so fucking cool because it's like, what's to be? It's just cool, all right? And I think that kind of solidifies that Apocalypse is already who he was gonna be. I think that right there solidified it. And it was just us needing to see it visually. Magneto watches from above, and En Sabah Nur thinks about what Magneto has been trying to teach him. And basically he says that they're going to take Logos prisoner instead of killing him right away. Magneto tells Charles to send the team in to retrieve the robots, which we find out that they are using the robots to actually kind of power their tech in order to try and figure out a way to get home. Nightcrawler bumps in and he has the robot parts or whatever, and he gives them to Beast. And Rogue is punching in the coordinates that Beast has set for them, so they are basically trying to see if they can get the fuck out of here before anything else goes down. Magneto says that he feels like General Logos can give them insight on how the technology works in order to get the technology to power them to go home, because they don't necessarily know how the technology works. And Beast actually makes a comment where he's like, it's advanced and primitive at the same time, which I feel like is interesting because maybe that was Nathaniel Richards' way of like preserving the timeline, or preserving a little bit of what he wanted to preserve in the timeline without actually giving way to something even more, in anything more in the future. So En Sabah Nur tells Magneto that Magneto has changed how the Sandstormers see En Sabah Nur. They used to see him as like an outcast, or they were scared of him, but now they don't fear him. They look to him as a leader, which I feel like is important, but also can go to a person's head. En Sabah Nur also tells Magneto that Ball, who is, I guess, second under En Sabah Nur, doesn't necessarily trust outsiders. So he's kind of looking at Magneto like, yo, what's up? And especially since they didn't kill Logos. So he's already like, I don't like this shit. I don't like that nigga. He need to go. He need to fucking go. So Beast asked Magneto if his whole plan is to basically get En Sabah Nur to do what they need him to do by being nice. And Magneto shoots back and he's like, I thought that was the X-Men way. All right. Like, we ain't got time for this. We do not have time for this. The professor says that they could Rogue. So Rogue chimes in and Rogue is like, okay, so why are we wasting time here? Why in the hell have you not just went inside this man's brain and pulled out what we need to find out? You are literally one of the most powerful mutants here, or one of the only fucking mind readers here. So why are we doing this? And Professor X basically says that if he does reach into En Sabah Nur's mind, it could trigger him into being Apocalypse anyway. Which I feel like at this point, there's always going to be an Apocalypse. I don't think you can stop Apocalypse in the beginning. You can only defeat him with what you learn in the beginning. So I definitely feel like it doesn't matter. He could have went into his mind and in those last 6 months that they've been there and got what they needed from him. But I don't know. Professor Xavier be on bullshit, bro. So Ball actually challenges En Sabah Nur, and he questions why they didn't take the whole palace. He's like, we could have took the whole palace. We only went through one fucking wall when we had forever to siege. And Magneto kind of chimes in and he's like, your men would have died if you had continued to siege. And Ball looks at Magneto and he was like, so? Survival of the fittest. Well, what Ball actually says is, how many are fit to survive? Which is crazy, but also another reassurance that this whole survival of the fittest thing is already in play. There is no changing his mind here. It's already in play. Magneto has given Nur a destiny, and he is teaching him to embrace Xavier's dream, and he wants to make Nur the first X-Men. Charles tells Magneto that was a huge mistake, giving Nur a destiny and telling him that we see a destiny for him, because then you already start destiny in his head, and that's just a crazy place to be with Apocalypse. But also, like, what Magneto says is that he could be the first of his kind to implement what Professor Xavier wants for mutants, and within 5,000 years, by the time they get there or wherever they're supposed to be, it should be a whole different situation for them. And I do understand where Magneto is coming from, but I do feel like it's really misguided. You can try and change a person, but how a person is raised and how a person, where like the outside environmental things come to play. And I think those are the same things with Magneto. Like, how many times have they tried to change Magneto into being a good person? And while right now he is doing what he is presumed to be good, but also they need to work together to get out of this situation. But how many times have they tried to change Magneto to make Magneto do something that he's supposed to do, or make Magneto feel like he should be a good person, and he just does not take the fucking like fight, or he doesn't take the chance. And so I feel like it's an interesting conversation that Magneto is trying to change the nature of who Apocalypse is, when no one has ever necessarily been able to change the nature of Magneto. Charles tells Magneto that Genosha wasn't his fault, because Magneto brings up Genosha, and Magneto responds and says that Genosha was both of their fault. He tells him that he took mutants to Genosha and told them that they would have a better life if they went there. He helped make Genosha a nation, and it was built on Xavier's dream. And that is true. Genosha was the embodiment of Xavier's dream. That's why he was everywhere on that island, although they thought he was dead too. And I think that was like a really good conversation, because that was something that really needed to be hashed out between them two. Because no, it's not just on Magneto. A lot of what Magneto did in season 1 was based on the fact that you left him your dream. You left him in your will, your dream. And he thought you was dead, and you were one of his greatest friends. So he was trying to fulfill that. So Logos actually baits Nur into calling him he baits Nur by calling him Ramatut's favorite slave, causing Nur to basically attempt to kill him. He was about to cut Logos' head off. Magneto saved Logos. And when Magneto does save Logos, he starts to laugh, which pisses Magneto off, which I thought was gonna make Magneto go ahead and kill his ass. And I think it's funny because there is something to be said about the Magneto and Apocalypse dynamic and how parallel. Charles actually goes into Logos's mind and encounters a voice that scared him. And that voice actually is Celestial that Ramatut is reaching out to. That Celestial is Essen or Essen. I could be saying that wrong, but we do see Essen or Essen in Guardians of the Galaxy. Essen is already in the MCU, so that's not something that's new. But that is who Charles Xavier, that disembodied voice is who Charles Xavier is actually talking to. We don't know what the hell Ramatut is doing talking to a Celestial, but we're going to find out. Charles is scared. He's like, we don't need to go there. I couldn't find out where the location was. He only knew pieces and parts of where the location is, but I'm not entirely sure we need to fucking go around there. We don't need to go around there fucking with them people. So Ball blows up the X-Men spot. He finds the robots that they were using, and they find the robots that they were using and blew up, and he basically causes En Sabah Nur to kill Logos because he feels like the X-Men and Magneto are basically lying to him and taking him as a fool and trying to create a weapon of their own, which they aren't. They just trying to get home. So these Sandstormers attack the X-Men, and it causes Bishop to blow his cover, and we find out that Bishop did make it, and he is actually one of the Sandstormers. So Bishop starts like shooting niggas. I love Bishop. He just starts shooting, and Apocalypse attacks Bishop. And while Apocalypse attacks Bishop, we find out that Ramatut put a tracker in Logos's mind or in his eye. It's a tracker on him, and the tracker is showing basically Ramatut where Logos is or where his body is basically. So the tracker goes off, and Ramatut is actually able to find out where Logos's head or body is, and he sends a missile, which this is fucking 5,000 years before 1997, so there shouldn't be missiles, but he sends a missile to blow up the mound that the X-Men and the Sandstormers are hiding out in. And we don't know who made it out, if anybody was able to time slide, if Bishop was able to get them out of there, if Bishop was able to get them out of there, but they also brought En Sabah Nur there, like to the 90s. We don't know what happened, and we won't know what happened until next week. This was a lot. This was a lot. I just want to talk about the Newton brothers real quick. They are American composers and multi-instrumentalists. And this is not the first Marvel project that they've worked on. They have done the score for Daredevil, Born Again, Season 1 and Season 2. But they are the music in Season 2. Now, I'm not saying that the music in Season 1 wasn't good, but it was very nostalgia based. This season, or at least for me. But this season, the music sets a lot of the themes, the scenes, and everything, and I love it. I just absolutely love it. The Newton brothers are doing their thing, and of course, a lot of it does probably come from the fact that they have scored horror movies, which you got Five Nights at Freddy's, the newest one in 2023. You got Forever Purge in 2021. These are all Newton brothers scores, which I love, and I think they are doing a fantastic job on X-Men 97 Season 2. Even Season 1 too, but yeah, definitely Season 2. But yes, guys, that is the end of the episode. That is the first 3 episodes of X-Men 97 Season 2. I'm so glad you guys tuned in. I thank you for keeping up with me and watching my episodes and sharing them. I appreciate you guys. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share, guys, because we are on a roll and we're going to keep going. All right, heroes, I will check in with y'all again. Bye, heroes.